Have you ever clicked on a website and thought, is this thing working? As a user, it's frustrating, but as a developer, it feels like a puzzle. You start wondering, why is this happening? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how Next.js gives us slick ways of handling this with streaming, and I'll walk you through two ways of pulling it off. One is the simpler approach, which is the loading.tsx file, and the second is the more advanced one, React Suspense. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into it. So, what is streaming? Streaming is a data transfer technique that allows you to break down a route into smaller chunks and progressively send them from the server to the client as they become ready. Instead of waiting for the entire page to load before showing anything, streaming lets you start rendering parts of the UI immediately, giving the users something to see and interact with sooner. Streaming in Next.js runs on React server components and Suspense, powering both the automatic loading.tsx fallback and the manual suspense control. To understand why streaming is useful, we need to look into how server-side rendering works and where it can fall short. Let's walk through a typical server-side rendering flow. The flow begins with the user's request to navigate to a route. In our case, let's say homepage. That request hits the server, and the server begins fetching the required data. Once the data is fetched, the server renders the full HTML for the page. It then sends the HTML along the CSS and the JavaScript bundles to the browser, and on the client, React kicks in to hydrate the page and make it interactive. It's important to note, these stages are sequential and blocking. That means while you're fetching the data, none of the other steps can happen. No HTML is rendered and nothing is sent to the browser. It all happens in one big block. This creates a long waiting time and a poor user experience, especially if the server is doing heavy lifting or if the connection is slow. Server-side rendering is faster than client-side rendering, but it still shows a blank screen until everything is ready. No loading UI, no interactivity. So, how can we solve this issue? One way is by using loading.tsx, a special file in Next.js that enables automatic streaming. Let's jump into the code and see it in action. And don't worry if I'm going a little fast, you can download the full example from the GitHub repo linked in the description below. In our demo app, we have a simple page with display cards component. The component is responsible for two things: fetching product data using getProducts and rendering interactive cards using the info card component. To stimulate slow data, we've added a random delay to each product. Now, if you visit the app and refresh the page, you'll notice nothing appears at first. You just stare at a blank screen until the data is back. That's the blocking SSR that we talked about. Even worse, if you are already on the page and refreshed it, then click on the interactive element, which is the heart. It might look like it worked. But once hydration kicks in, it resets. That's what we call a false interaction. And yeah, it can confuse the users. Let's fix this with a loading.tsx file. We'll create the file inside our route folder. In our example, it's going to be the main route. Now, once we created the loading.tsx file, inside it, let's return a skeleton loader. In our case, we'll use a card skeleton and generate a grid of 6 placeholders. And lastly, match the structure and layout of the actual page, like the card grid, to avoid layout shifts. This gives the loading state a polished, consistent look even while the data is still on the way. Just remember, whenever you use the loading.tsx file, it only applies to the route it's placed in. So make sure you put in the exact route where you want the fallback UI to appear. Next.js automatically wraps our route with a suspend boundary and uses our loading.tsx as the fallback. Now when we reload, the skeleton shows immediately, even while the real data is loading. This is streaming in action. So, to recap what we did quickly. First, we've added a loading.tsx file. Second, under the hood, Next.js wraps that page with Suspense. Then the fallback shows first, then gets swapped with the real content when it's ready. This is one way to implement streaming, clean and automatic. But what if we want more control? What if each card loads at a different time and we want to show it as soon as they are ready? In our case, getProduct returns each card after a random delay. Instead of waiting for them all, we can start streaming them one by one. This is where manual suspense comes in. So, let's walk through the code step by step, and before we do, just make sure you delete the loading.tsx file as we won't be using this for this approach. Let's start with the original display cards component. We are awaiting all the cards using promise.all and rendering them together. Step 1, Add a new component called display card above your display cards component. It uses the use API to resolve the promise and render an info card. Step 2. Remove the promise.all line so we are no longer waiting for all the cards. Instead, just map over the unresolved promise. Step 3. Wrap each display card with suspend boundary and pass it a skeleton fallback. And the last step is to add the UUID to assign a unique key to each card within the suspense. Now save your file and let's test the result. Once we refresh the files, you will notice that as soon as one product is ready, it renders. There's no need to wait for the rest. It feels snappy, smooth, and reactive. We can actually take this even further. With this setup, you can interact with one card while the rest are loading, and the state won't change. It works just as expected. Let's quickly break down what actually changed under the hood. Previously, when we didn't use Suspense, each card was loading individually in a sequence. So it looked like one card is loaded, then waited for the next, and so on, but we couldn't return anything to the client until all of them were done. We had to wait for everything to finish before rendering anything at all. But once we wrapped Suspense around each component, Next.js enabled concurrent fetching. All cards now started loading at the same time, and each one is rendered to the client as soon as it's ready, with the fallback UI shown in the meanwhile. And that's it. That's how you can go from a blank screen to a beautifully streamed experience, one card at a time. I hope you enjoyed the video. I am planning to make a lot more visuals and keep improving over the next few months. So if you like it, consider subscribing. Leave a comment if you have any feedback or questions, and give it a like. It helps me massively. See you in the next video.